Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Jeco YouTube exclusive. We are going to be finishing this 800-pound hand-carved, solid wood, hand-gilded table base for our friends at Black Forest. This thing's going to be going to Mexico City. We're in Calgary, Alberta. It's quite a ways to travel. But anyways, if you come over here close up, I'll show you. This is all gold leaf, hand-gilded, hand-carved tables. So one of the things that we got to be making sure we do, because normally when we finish, we like to blow everything really good and get all the dust off it. I've already kind of gently just give this thing a gentle little blow, but not very much, because you don't want to start blowing that gilding off. So the whole reason that we're putting a clear coat on this is to protect it from actually getting worn off and to give it a super high gloss. So what we're going to do is I like to put a polyurethane barrier isolator sealer on here. It's going to be a very thin coat, just enough to kind of lock it in and create a barrier between the polyurethane and the glue of the gilding. And secondly, after that, we're going to do an automotive clear coat on that. So we'll show you as we go. Love the SATA system. So these disposable cups, we love these puppies, and this gun here, extremely versatile. It's the Jet 100B FRP. So we've got about 6 or 7 of these things, because we spray a variety of viscosities and different materials here. So for versatility, we like this gun. It has a 1.8 tip and nozzle in it, and so it can handle really fine or really heavy. So it's kind of like a one-size-fits-all tool for us here in the wood finishing. We're going to start out with a wood finishing technique with this barrier coating that I'm about to pour, but where it will vary is when we get into the top coat. So I'll explain the difference when we get there. I gotta mix this in the mix room for a sec. So this is an ICA isolator sealer. It's water white, and it's super thin, and we even have to add thinner to it. So this is often used for wood, for exterior wood, but I like to use it on any kind of an unusual surface that we want to make sure that we don't have any kind of weird reactions between the top coat and the substrate and what's been applied to it. So this is essentially a barrier. So once this dries, it won't allow whatever thinners are in the top coat to penetrate through and cause any problems with what may be underneath in the glue. But in order for us to do this properly and be careful about it, I've got to put it on very, very thin, let it kind of sit on top of there and dry quickly. Best way to measure, always by weight. So for that, we use a scale. I put the cup on, I zero it. And I don't like to make a mess, so that's why I have hundreds of these little cups here. So in this particular case, I'm not really paying attention to any of the lines on the outside of this cup, because it's all being done by weight. A little bit more, it's deceiving when you have a piece like that. There's a lot more surface area than you may calculate because of the hand carving and the texture. So this particular sealer requires 10% hardener and 30% thinner. So I zero it. 414. I want to have 41 grams. This way you're always going to be dead accurate if you go by weight. There we are. Now for the reduction, doesn't have to be exactly perfect. For this we're using the 110 universal urethane thinner from ICA. One more of those just about. And there we go. Plug our little filter in there. Give this a stir. Once I plug the lid on it, I'll probably give it a bit of a shake too, for good measure. These things here, you got to make sure you line them up just right and lock it in place. Once you get that little click feel to it, you know it's locked in place. And there we go. And I like to give it a little shake for good measure. Now you're going to see this little valve here. All of these cups come with it, right? There's nothing on there right now. And you'll see the lid has one cover attached to each side. One of them is for a cap on this thing. If you're done with it, you want to put a cap on it and store it. You can use it for that. The other one is a cap that goes on the bottom, but also serves as a valve. So now that we've got the gun in position, we give this a little pop. You'll hear it. Come on. There we go. And now it can breathe. So now what it's going to do is it won't create a vacuum in here when you're trying to spray. It will allow air to come in and everything will flow nicely. Just plotting my air hose and make sure that I'm not going to get tangled up in anything. Now, like I said, I've already kind of gently given this a very light blow with very low pressure just to make sure there's no dust or anything settled on here. We did cover it up when we had it up on the rack. It's been here for about a week and it's sitting over on that side there. It could collect dust, so I just wanted to make sure that's all gone. Everything is good, looking good. So what I'm going to do now is don my mask and put a light coated barrier on here. So when I'm applying this sealer, I want to have my pressure a little bit higher, probably about 45 pounds. I want to have my fan open nice and wide, and I want to have just a nice even distribution. So I'm not opening the fan completely up because sometimes you'll get a dead spot in the middle. I want to be able to, if you take a look, have a nice even fan, and I'm going to be holding my gun back about 6 to 8 inches. I'm going to let that flash a minute. I'm going to go over it one more time with what I've got left. just inspecting it while it's flashing to make sure that there's no reaction or problems. Whenever you're unsure of your substrate, because this is a little bit different, you want to put very light coats on, build it slowly. So that way you're not pouring a bunch of solvent on there that's got time to sit and fester and cause potential problems. So whenever you're doing a barrier coat, unless it's on raw wood where it needs to kind of soak in, whenever you're doing a barrier coat on something like this, you want to kind of layer it lightly, let it sit on top and build up. Well, we're okay. So the other thing that's going to happen with this is once the barrier's on there and it's dry, it's going to lock that in. So I'll be able to actually take a blower to it and not have it flying off or anything like that, because I'm going to want to knock off anything that's just kind of loose, so that when we do our top coat, we're going to build that multiple layers so that it's beautifully nice and smooth, and you'll be able to, when it's dry, run your hand over it safely. Okay, I was just going over a couple of spots where I thought it might have been a miss because of the angle of my spray or anything. So we've got her pretty much sealed up now. So we're going to give this about 20 to 30 minutes to set up with the airflow in here, and I've got the heat on. She'll set up pretty quick, and then we'll get ready to put some finish on. It's good. Anywhere where it's kind of flashing a little different is mostly texture. So because this is a hand carved piece, some of these areas might have a little bit of wood grain texture, which is kind of like opened. And so in some places it looks like it's flashing different, like you're not sure, and then you change the angle and look at it and you're like, it's fine. So I think once we get the clear coats built on there, it's going to just fill everything right in, because it's a pretty high solids coating, and you'll be able to run your hand over this and it'll feel like velvety smooth. Now we've got some 2-component material left over. We're not going to be using this anytime in the next 24 to 48 hours. And even if I was using it in the next couple hours, I'd keep it, but I'm not. So we dispose of it properly. We collect all of our waste material in barrels, and that's dirty thinner, mixed 2-component paint that is kicking off or is going to kick off, and we pour it into barrels, and our friends at Sumas Environmental pick those up from us once or twice a year, take them to Swan Hills, Alberta for disposal, proper disposal, and that way we make sure that none of this stuff ends up in the landfill. We're almost there. It's pretty dry. And so one of the things I'm doing now, I'm rubbing my hand over, I'm just making sure there's no loose flakes coming off. Nothing hanging down that's gonna create a peak in the clear or an opening in the clear coat. So I'm not gonna sand this, clearly, that would be a bad idea. But I am just gonna go over it with my hands, make sure there's no loose flake that is just kind of hanging there wanting to come off, because this is where the idea behind the barrier was to lock that in. That's why I went over it twice. Now I don't see any stuff coming off on my hand. Before we put the barrier on, if I had done that with my hand, I would have had gold leaf all over it. So this is locked in nicely now, knocked down, just smooth it out a little bit, and this is, it's only this edge right here This edge is going to keep the gilding on it all the way around, and when you run your hand on it, it feels a little bit rough. I mean, that's understandable here on the hand carved part, but I want to be able to knock this down and just smooth it out just a little bit. This edge down here, if you look closely, this is solid walnut, and their intention after we've done our clear coats on all of this is to actually sand this edge completely raw and put their UV oil finish on it. So it's actually going to be a clean walnut edge all the way around this. And then on top, there'll be a resin table. So this edge will remain gilded and exposed, but this edge is going to show a clear walnut. So a little bit different approach. So what I'm going to do is just carefully denib this surface all the way around, give the whole thing just a light blow, and then we'll be ready to mix our finish coat. So for denibbing, I like to use these really super fine sponges from Sia. They're great for seal sanding or just like a really fine denibbing, especially when they're nice and broken in like this. Essentially, all I'm doing is just kind of gently rubbing over it and taking off any of the high spots that are kind of feeling a little rough. I'm not going to apply any real pressure. I'm just kind of dragging it across, and that already feels a whole lot better. You know, because the nature of gilding, there's going to be a bit of a texture to it anyways. If you look very, very close, you can see where the foil has wrinkled a little. In fact, you can even see slight brush strokes from the glue. So we're not trying to smooth that out, believe me. What we're trying to do is just make it, when your hand runs over that, you're not feeling any sharp nibs. This area here is a little bit rougher, so I'm going to be super careful. I'm not applying any pressure, I'm just kind of gently knocking it down. I want that thing to be baby smooth when we rub our hand over it after a finish coat. That's another reason why you have to use a really high solids finish coat in applications like this, because you want it to be able to sort of bridge over top of any kind of textury imperfections. Gilding by its very nature is going to have them. So you'll see that there's very little, if any, foil coming off on here, which is great. That's what you want to see. Yeah, it's definitely, until you get your finish coats built up on here, we're probably going to do 2 or 3 finish coats on here. It's kid gloves, man. Kid gloves all the way. So once that finish coat is on there, this stuff will be able to withstand all kinds of wear and tear. Obviously, not too much wear and tear because it's a heavy piece. If you bump into it, you're probably going to dent it or ding it. But what I'm talking about is just general, you know, you can rub against it, you can use it, and like you would any table base. So make sure you lock that tight. I can't tell you how many times I didn't hear the double click, and then I put the fluid in, I pick it up, it's like, it's dripping. So double click, make sure you get that. Now, in this case, we're mixing by volume because it's really straightforward. It's 2 to 1, and I'm going to use a cone strainer. So this clear coat here, I have used it several times. Absolutely love this stuff, man. Very high solids, complete wet look clear coat, automotive finish. It looks exactly the same dry as it does when you apply it wet. It doesn't drop even half a degree of sheen. The stuff looks amazing. I want to go up to 500. And as with this stuff here, it doesn't have a catalyst, it has a hardener. Big difference. You can tell by the ratio the difference. So things with a catalyst are basically speed up the drying process. Things that require a hardener actually complete the chemical reaction that they wouldn't dry any other way. So, and make it super hard. So I've gone 500 mils of the base. Now I'm going 250. And as you can see, this stuff is crystal clear. There's almost no, not that it matters in this case, almost no yellowing or any kind of hue to it at all. Now, just like before, I'm going to give it a stir, but for good measure, I'm also going to give it a shake because I've filled this thing right up. This stuff is not meant to be thinned. However, if I'm doing a really smooth surface and I want to get it absolutely like glass, I will thin it about 5% just to give it that little extra flatness. But so when we're spraying it, we're going to take kind of an automotive finish approach. So this one here, we're going to have the pressure a little bit higher, fan's still going to be open. We're going to move and put light layers over top, very similar to how we applied the sealer initially, but I'm going to slow it down just a little bit so it gets a little bit wetter. So I'm not trying to create a barrier. I'm trying to basically get everything nice and evenly coated. But we don't want to try and crack it out of the park with one coat. That is how, with products like this, anything high gloss, you can end up getting runs and sags. Now, you might get away with it with a piece like this, but it's just not the way I roll. Like, you want to actually always have good habits of spraying, do everything the same way, so you can always expect the same results. So I'm going to be doing, like I said, multiple coats on there. So I'm going to mask up and see how she goes. You know, what's interesting about this stuff is that if we were to come in tomorrow and look at this, it would be completely clear like that, except completely solid. That's how much she hardens up. For those of you wondering what I was just doing there, and this is another for sprayer's habit, never just pick up your gun and just start spraying. Always test your spray pattern, test your pressure, make sure it's feeling right, it's looking right, check your fan. I always do it against a bit of a dark backdrop, like the filters there, so that I can kind of see if the fan is nice and solid all the way across. Like I said before, sometimes if your fan is open too wide, it's going to be heavy here and here and a little bit dead in the middle. You do not want that with your clear coat and your final finish. You want to have it, close it up so that you get a nice solid, you want it open as far as you can, but close it so that you don't have a dead spot in the middle, if that makes sense. All right, so I'm gonna let that flash for about 15 minutes. I can bake it, but because there's gilding on it, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna let it flash for 15, take a look at it. I'm probably gonna wanna do 2 more coats the exact same way that I just did it to really give it a good robust finish. And we'll check back in. All right, everybody, in case you're wondering what I'm looking for here, while this is drying, it's been about 10 minutes so far. So what I'm looking for is a tack-free, just what we call tacky, right? So basically when you can touch it with your finger, pull it away, and there's no material on it, but it still feels sticky. Now this here, the coating's a little bit thinner than down here. I'm using this to kind of read where we're at. So we're still sticky, but it's not coming away on my finger. But if I was to touch some of these areas down below, it would still come away. So what I want to do is wait until I can actually touch down here, still feel the tackiness of it, but not have it come away. Now I wouldn't do this with a car, obviously, because I believe fingerprints in it. It's all about timing and whatnot, but this is a bit of a different situation because the build is irregular because of the shape and everything. So in order for me to get a true read on it, I've got to sort of do the tack coat test. Now when I recoat this thing, I want it to be still open, right? So it still has to be tacky, because then it will have a chemical bond and it will build up on there, but it won't necessarily melt in and start pouring off. If I was to touch this and I would still have wet coating on my fingers and I decided to recoat, that's exactly what would happen. All right, ready for round 2. It is tacked up exactly how I want it. So I'm gonna now go and give it another 2 coats the same way. I found that when it's hard to read a wet edge on a piece like this, so I found that I was overbuilding a little bit in this area right here. So I'm going to adjust. All right, look at that glisten. That should be a wrap. This thing is going to dry just as shiny as it looks right now. And when you run your hand over it, it's going to be smooth and beautiful. So I'm happy with how this has turned out. So hopefully our friends at Black Forest and their client in Mexico City will be just as happy too. You know, you see that texture of the foil, right? And now it's all just preserved and locked in under this really high build, high gloss coat. right, there it is. This is not dry yet. It's still pretty wet, but honestly, it's going to look exactly the same dry as it does now. And when calculating the square footage or the amount of material you need to mix on a piece like this, that's got so many textures to it, I use twice as much as I would have normally calculated for a piece like this. So instead of going over 2 coats, we went 4. And just to be sure that I make sure I got every angle fully covered. And this, when it dries down, it's going to be super hard and ready for full use. And I'm really happy with it. So I hope our friends at Black Forest love it too.